Unit 6 is going to continue with some trig functions and specifically solving trig equations. Remember that when we have sine or cosine or tangent of theta, that means you're solving for the angles and you're using what's known as inverse trig, where we're working backwards and we're using a point around the unit circle to then think of what angle that value is at. So remember, we're going to have our angles. They could be less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, 0, but they have to be less than 360, so they shouldn't equal 360. Some of them we might have to round, and just round to the nearest tenth of a degree. So number 1, sine of theta is like our unknown here. So over here to the side, let me write, it's kind of like having this, 2 times x minus square root of 3 equals 0. You would solve for x by adding the square root of 3 to 0 and then dividing by 2. So you're doing like that. So if it helps you, you can replace your trig function with an x and just solve and put it back in. I don't really mind it too much. I just see this as a value to get by itself. So I'd add the square root of 3 over. And I get 2 times sine of theta equals square root of 3 divided away the 2. So sine of theta is square root of 3 over 2. So I'm asking myself, sine at what angle gets me a value of square root of 3 over 2? That's where sine is positive. So I know that is in quadrant 1 and 2, where the y's are going up. And so you should have this memorized. I can always remember sine of a 30 is 1/2. Sine of a 60 is square roots of 3 over 2. So my reference angle is a 60. In quadrant 1, that would just be a 60 degree. In quadrant 2, that would be a 60 back from a 180. So we'd be doing 180 minus 60, which would be 120. So we're essentially doing what we already did, just with some solving equations mixed in. And I do have still my unit circle here with some tangent values wrote on here, or written on here. But you can see that the y value, where am I at, is square root of 3 over 2 right here. It's positive, and right here at 120. All right, number 2, same thing. This time they're going to use cosine of c, but we want to get this cosine term on the same side. And so it's kind of like having an 8x plus 6 equals a 3x plus 7 problem. So basically you're just want to get your variables on the same side and then solve for that. I always subtract the smaller variable, so I'm going to subtract the 3 cosine of c. That would be 5 cosine of c plus 6 equals 7. Subtract the 6 over. That equals 1. Divide away the 5. So I get cosine of c equals a fifth. That's not part of an ordered pair around my unit circle. So you're going to have to grab a calculator and do inverse cosine of a fifth. And that should get you 78.5 degrees. Rounded to the nearest tenth. But we have to think about that's our reference angle. And we're talking about cosine being a positive value. X's are positive in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. So this would be our answer here in quadrant 1. In quadrant 4, you're going to have to take 360 minus that. So we'll have 78.5 and 281.5. Okay. So 2 answers. All right, number 3. We have 2 times secant of our angle plus 1 needs to equal 0. So that's a picture like a 2x plus 1 equals 0. We'd subtract 1. Divide by 2. Secant of some angle needs to equal negative a half. Okay, whenever it's one of these reciprocal functions, go ahead and change it. So the reciprocal of secant is cosine of theta. We're going to actually do the reciprocal of this answer as well. So flip it, and that would be negative 2 over 1, which is negative 2. So then that again is not on our unit circle. X values only go from -1 to +1. Never gets any bigger than that. So it's actually not possible, but in case you forget that, you could still try doing inverse cosine of -2 and it will tell you it's a domain error. That does not exist in the domain of a cosine function or a sine function. So this is a no solution. Number 4, we've got cosecant here. 6 times that cosecant of that angle plus 6 needs to make 0. Subtract 6. Divide by 6. Cosecant of our angle needs to equal -1. Change it into the reciprocal on both sides, so that would be a sine of our angle. You can't reciprocate 1. It's still 1/1, so this is still -1. We had a couple problems on this, but think about where the y value is -1 around our unit circle. That only happens at this specific point, and that angle is 270 degrees. So only one answer on that one. And then number 5, we would solve for cotangent. I'm going to do it quicker. We would subtract 4 divided by 3. Go ahead and reciprocate both sides. So it'd be a tangent of our angle needs to be -3/4. So remember, tangent is a y over x. That's not on your unit circle unless you took the time to write them. And I don't ever see a -3/4 happening. So we would have to go and put in second tangent of, I'm going to actually just do regular 3/4, which is 36.9 is the reference angle. Okay, and then this is where tangent was negative, which happens in quadrants 2 and 4. And so remember, I'm taking 180 minus my 36.9, and then in quadrant 4, I'm taking 360 minus 36.9, and that'll get you your two answers. 143.1 and 323.1 degrees.